Janome.
Hi everybody, welcome to the studio. I'm Kimberly Einmo and we're in month 6 of Janome's Block of the Month Blitz 2 quilt, and we are ready to tackle the big block. That's right, we're going to make this beautiful 32-inch block today. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I promise you it's going to be fun. And I'm going to walk you through every step. Everything we're going to do, we've basically already done. Now we're going to put all those skills together and create something really, really special. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to need. You're going to need to print out your handouts for month 6, and we're going to post the link, but you can go to the Janome page, the Janome America page, or find the link on social media, on Facebook, on the Janome Sewing Machines page, or even my website, KimberlyEinmo.com. But make sure you print out your handouts because you're going to need this for this month. We've got everything listed here that you're going to need to cut. You can either spend some time cutting everything just as listed, or just follow along with the video here and cut as you go. We're really going to break this down into very usable units, and we're going to build the block from the center outward. So this is the first part of the block that we're going to create. Nothing super special or different about this part. This center part of the block will end up measuring 8.5 inches by 8.5 inches unfinished, and it's made with all half square triangles. So what you're going to need is you're going to need your mint, lagoon, turquoise, and sapphire strips. So pull those out, and then all you're going to do is take your side B of the Precision Flying Geese and half square triangle ruler, use the mint green side, and you're going to cut yourself 12 of your mint triangles, and I've got mine doubled up here so you can see them. 12 of those. You'll need a total of 4 lagoon, 12 of your turquoise, and 4 of your sapphire. Once you cut all of those triangles, you're going to put them together to make the half square triangle units just exactly as listed right here at the top of the page. Get that done, and be sure to carefully follow the pressing arrows as listed on your handouts, because if you do that, it's going to make block assembly so much better and so much easier for you. So let's take a few minutes, get that done, get all of your triangles cut, make your half square triangles, press them all, and we're going to meet over at the sewing machine and get started putting it all together. This is the center part of the block that we're going to be making, and you will need a total of 16 half square triangles, each one measuring 2.5 inches unfinished. Again, it's very important that you follow your handouts very closely to make the half square triangles as shown, and press them with the arrows. Follow the red arrows. Once you've done that, lay out your block. Now there's a couple of ways that you can put this block together, and I've got 2 of them laid out here that I thought I'd share with you. One way isn't better than the other, it's just different. Here I started by making my little center square. This would measure 4 inches finished or 4.5 inches unfinished, and you can start by making that and then sewing 2 little 2-patch units of your half square triangles to go on either side, and then making rows, 2 rows of your half square triangles. So what we would do is sew these little 2-patch units to the sides of the center, essentially making 3 rows. and then sew your rows together. That is absolutely one way to put this together. The other way is to just lay them out, all 16 half square triangles, and sew them one to the next, to the next, to the next. And that's what I've done. I laid them out, I sewed the second column to the first column and kept them all chained together. So you can see these are held together by threads, right? Makes it very easy when you go over to the pressing surface to press your seams. Then all you would do is add the last row, and we can do that right now. So I think I'll start with this one. I'll put these aside, and all you're going to do is keep going just in the same way, and you're going to sew all of these and keep the chains connected to each other. And don't forget to use that perfect scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you're following your pattern to make sure they are lining up as they should, and the orientation of those half square triangles is correct. Take your time here, and once you get all of these sewn together, then it's very easy to take the whole thing to the pressing surface or to your ironing board and press the seams. And here we go, last one. There. Now I'm going to press this last column of half square triangles. Once they're all pressed, I can sew row to row to row, and it's all put together. So pick the method that's going to work best for you. Make sure you get everything pressed, get your block put together, and we're done with that center section. We're going to move on to the next section already, and I'll meet you back at the cutting table. That wasn't so bad, was it? Now you have that center block done. But before we can go any further, you're going to need to take just a moment to make sure it's squared up to 8.5 inches unfinished. So use that precision pre-cuts ruler, lay it on top of your unit. Make sure that you're using all the lines and that your 45-degree line is going right through the center point. Make sure that you hold it steady, and then you can trim off anything that's excess. All right, we want to get this as close to 8.5 inches unfinished as we can possibly make it. Spin the block around, line up the 8.5 inch lines on the 2 raw edges that you just trimmed, and trim anything else remaining. It's not that bad. And then we'll be able to move to the next section, which will be the yellow and orange pieces, some of which you've already cut previously. And now that we've finished this, lay it aside and get the next pieces out according to your handout, which is the corners and section 2. Section 1 is all done. I'm really proud of you. The center of block L, the first section, is already done. Now you're well on your way. And section 2 is what we're working on next. The great thing about section 2 is you already pre-cut all the units way back in the beginning when we had the bonus cutting on month 1. So you're going to be looking for your lemon and orange squares and rectangles and those trapezoids and side A triangles that you already cut, labeled, and set aside. I'm sure you have them in amongst your strips and your cut units somewhere. Let's start with the easiest part. You're going to take your 4 2.5 inch lemon and 4 2.5 inch orange squares and sew them together to create 2 patches. And we need 4 of those. Easy peasy, right? Now you're going to take your rectangles, your 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles of orange, and we're going to make the little corner sections. You could see them up there in the quilt, and we're going to make these little corner sections. The thing to remember is that while they look exactly the same, there's actually two versions of these corners. So you need to lay them out so that you get the two versions here. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Once you have these two patches done, then you're going to go ahead and lay them out with your rectangles, your orange rectangles, and you're going to make two just exactly like that. The other two are just a smidgen different. Now you're going to turn the unit the other way and then add your rectangles, your orange rectangles. Do you see? Just follow your handouts, sew these units together. You need a total of two each of each version of your corners. So you'll have 4 corner units when you're all done, and they should measure 4.5 inches unfinished. Go ahead and get those done. Press according to the directions on your handouts, and then we're going to tackle those triangles and trapezoids and making a big triangle unit. All right, now we've got those corner pieces all done and we can set those aside. Easy, right? Let's take those trapezoids that we cut from our orange pieces, and we've got 4 of those, and we're going to take our 4 side A lemon triangles, and we're going to put those with the trapezoids. What we're doing here is creating large triangles. These are like the setting triangles that are going to be in the block so that we can make star points. These are going to be next to some star points. So that's what we're making here. Let me show you how easy it is to put these together. What we're going to do is you would lay out your side A lemon triangle with your orange trapezoid and put them right sides together, aligning the raw edges. Then you just center, kind of eyeball it, center the unit. But what you'll notice, what's really great, is the lopped off top edge of that lemon triangle should align perfectly on the bottom of the trapezoid. So it just lines up there perfectly, and then we're going to sew our 1/4 inch line. So let's do that, our 1/4 inch seam. Let's do that right now. Whoops. All right, here we go. There we go. Perfect. All right, and this is what it will look like. We're going to go ahead and press at the ironing board or at your pressing surface, and we need 4 of these larger triangles. One of the reasons I designed this quilt the way I did, to have this giant 32-inch block, was to show you that when you're using 2.5-inch strips or jelly roll strips, there's so much more you can do with these pieces. You can make bigger units with them, so you're not always stuck with just making smaller blocks. So what we're doing is we're using these 2.5-inch strips as building blocks for larger units. You're going to see that more in the next step when we make the star points. But let's go ahead and finish sewing all of these and then get them pressed. Follow the directions of the red arrows on your handout. Let's finish our lemon and orange units, get them done, and then we're going to make our star points. Just a quick little note here, when you're pressing these to make the giant triangles or the bigger triangles, we are pressing the seam toward a lemon. So you want to press the seam away from the orange. We will need to trim these little dog ears off, but you can do that after you've done all your pressing. But let's make sure that when you are pressing the seam closed first, and then you're pressing toward the lemon triangle, making that nice and flat. Again, press it closed first, then away from the orange. And we'll get those trimmed up, get rid of those dog ears, and then we'll be ready to move to the next section where we actually make the blue star points. I think these big triangles are just so sunny and pretty. can set them aside for right now because we're finished with those for the moment, and we're going to move on to our royal fabric. So you would get your royal strips out, or at least one strip. What we're going to need is a total of 8 2.5-inch squares and 16 of your 2.5-inch side B triangles. So you would cut all of those from your royal strip. What we're trying to do ultimately is to create star points that we're going to sew on either side of this giant triangle. We're going to kind of make it look like there's a radiating background behind the star. And so in order to have units that are large enough to make star points, we have to build those triangles with a square and 2 triangles of the same fabrics. That gives the illusion of bigger star points. So what you would do is to follow along carefully, and you're going to lay out a couple of your squares just as shown, and then you're going to take your little triangles, your side B triangles, and lay those out like this. Now, Mr. Kim, are we getting this? Can you see what we're doing here?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. All right, awesome. So what we need to do is we need to make a total of 8 of these units. And the easiest way to do that is to just lay these out. You can see I have squares and my side B triangles, and I've put the lopped off edges close together, the points of those triangles as far apart as possible. Then you can pick up one of your little triangles, lay it on top of your square, and just go ahead and stitch your perfect scant 1/4-inch seam allowance. And you can chain piece these. You can do 8 at a time in one direction here. I'm just going to do 2 for the moment. Then you would stop and go to the pressing surface or your ironing board and make sure that you press these following the directions, which means you're going to be pressing the seams toward the triangles. I'm just going to finger press for the moment here, but I am going to give this a good press with my iron. And then what you would do is take your other side B triangle and put it on top here, just like this, and then we're going to sew that side down. It's pretty easy. There you go. And we're making these larger triangles. Okay. Now, these are going to need a really good press. And you're going to want to go ahead and make 8 of these units. But I wanted to show you here what it looks like after it's all pressed. It's a nice big triangle. These are going to be our star points. So go ahead and get yours stitched and pressed, and then I'll show you how to put them on those bigger triangle units. You're going to need all 4 of your large lemon and orange triangles, and you're going to need your 8 royal triangles for your star points. So this is the unit that we're ultimately going to make, and it's very easy to put together now since we've got everything all assembled and pressed. Just take your large lemon and orange triangle and then take one of your royal triangles and put them right sides together. I always sew with these star points or these smaller triangles on top so I can see if anything shifts or moves or gets a little wonky. But go ahead and stitch using your beautiful 1/4-inch seam allowance. Align the raw edges, keep the raw edges aligned as you sew. Yes, you do want to make sure that you try to hit the intersection of those units, those royal units. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world, because let me tell you, with those 2 little triangles and squares creating the larger unit, if you don't hit it, it won't show. But here I did pretty darn good. Now I would like you to stop and press here with your iron. It's kind of important to do that before you add the other side. But for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and add my other triangle. But since you're at home or at your dealer working along, take time to press all these. You can even chain piece all of one side, all 8 of one side before you add the other side, and then keep going all the way to the top. There we go. Now, ultimately, these units should measure 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches unfinished. Make sure that you give them a good press and then take the time to true them up, square them up with your precision pre-cuts ruler, making sure that they measure exactly what they're supposed to. 4.5 by 8.5 inches unfinished. Get rid of the dog ears, and then we'll move on to the next section. We are making such great progress. This is going together so much more smoothly than I'll bet you could have even imagined. So you should have 4 of your little star rectangles ready to go, these star points. Now we're going to create a bigger center block. You'll see at the bottom of the page that we are going to be making this block right here. So you'll need that center unit that we already created, and you're going to sew it in between your star points and those corner units that we made. So I already went ahead and sewed my corner units onto my star points, so I've made 2 rows here. The only thing left to do is sew the star point rectangles onto that center block. So let's do that right now together. And let's line these up, and it is absolutely okay to use pins if that makes you feel better, or you can use clips. But if you've been pressing carefully, like the directions on the handouts, you will notice that all of those seams snuggle beautifully. So it shouldn't be too hard at all to match up these points. And you can absolutely use pins if you want. And we're going to see how this looks right here. And I'm going to line these up. Make sure you align the raw edges. Make sure those seams are snuggling. So all the way to the end, and let's have a look. Ooh, it looks nice. It looks really, really good. Now let's sew the other one on. Then you're going to take time to press, and then you'll add these units on and create the bigger block. This block will measure 16.5 by 16.5 unfinished when you're all done. So get all those units put together, make that bigger block. You're moving right along. I'll see you over at the cutting table. Isn't it pretty? Sometimes it's just nice to appreciate how beautiful something is as you go through the process. So you need to be proud of yourself for making this beautiful center star. You're more than halfway done of this great big block. So set this aside for the moment. We are going to move to the top of page 3 of our month 6 handouts, and we're going to be working on section 4, the outer star points. So let me show you exactly what you're going to need, and you can go back and follow the cutting chart, but let's walk you through it. Mr. Kim, come on around here. I want to point out to everybody what we're doing here, and we're going to break it down and make it really, really easy. You're going to need a total of 8 of these units, 4 in each orientation. So you're going to need to cut your lavender 2.5-inch squares, and then you're going to need to make some half square triangles from your seaweed and lavender. You're going to need a total of 8 of those, and we're going to be making units 4 in each orientation, meaning 4 that look like this and 4 like this. So here you go. Here's what they look like after they're sewn. These will measure 2.5 by 4.5 inches unfinished. And again, you're going to need 4 of each orientation. So we have a total of 8. Once you finish making all of these units, we're going to move over here and make some flying geese units. And here we're going to need a total of 4 of each of these different flying geese units. So you would cut 4 side A triangles from your emerald and 4 side A triangles from your lime, but you're also going to need 4 pairs of your side B triangles of lime and 4 pairs of side B triangles from citrus. Then you're going to be making these into flying geese units, 4 of each, and they will look exactly like this. So we have the emerald and lime and citrus. Make 4 of each of those, and then you're going to sew those together to make a square unit that looks exactly like this. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and add your lavender and seaweed units to either side. Whoops, let's turn this around this way. There you go. I had it upside down. And we're going to be making units that look just like this. These will measure 8.5 by 4.5 inches unfinished. Follow along with the arrows, the pressing arrows, and let's get 4 of these units made. Again, remember, lavender and seaweed. We've got citrus, lime, and emerald. We've broken it down, follow the handouts, make those units, and then end up making 4 of these rectangle units, and then we'll come back and make the star points. So go ahead and get those done. We're almost done with section 4. I know you're busy putting all of your units together, and so am I. So I'm just going to talk and sew a little bit, spend a little time with you while we're putting these together, and just point out a couple things as I go. When you sew the flying geese units together, once you get ready to press, make sure and press toward the emerald and lime unit. So we're going to literally press that down. I can show you here. I've already pressed that seam toward the emerald and lime. So I'm going to finger press that, and it really does need a good press. So I'll set this one aside until I can get it pressed, and then I'm going to show you that we're going to sew these units on. So when you have pressed your little 2-patch units with your lavender and seaweed, make sure and press that seam allowance toward the square. That will make these seams actually snuggle really nicely together. And then you can just line these up. I think I might put a pin right there, just because if you don't match up the seams and these intersections, it can look a little funny in the overall block. It can really stick out like a sore thumb. So it might be best if you pin right here at those intersections and make sure that you're getting a really nice point. So let's go ahead and sew that together, shall we? Yep, let's line up those raw edges and make sure you shoot for making sure that your needle comes right to that intersection. There we go. I think I got it. Let's have a look. Ooh, that's beautiful. But I sewed it on upside down.
Does that mean Mr. Kim gets to reverse sew it?
It can happen to anyone, right? All right, so this one gets set aside for Mr. Kim to unsew. Let's try this unit right here. You know, I could put that as part of a blooper reel, but I'd rather leave it in and show you that it happens to the best of us. So let's try that again. Let's literally flip this unit over and pin, and this time we're going to get it right. I hope you're out there just relating to the fact that, you know, we're just all human when it comes to making mistakes in quilting, and it's just fabric. Don't get too upset about it. It's easy to take out. And go ahead and line that up. Oh, this one's a good one. I can tell this one's going to be just perfect. Let's see what we got here. Aha! That's the way it should be done. All right, so I'm going to add this other side and go ahead and finish making all 4 of these units, and then we'll check back in and see what's next. Now that we have these units sewn, it's time to give them a good press. Go ahead and make sure that you press them closed first, and then when you press with the seam out towards the lavender units, out towards those pretty lavender units. Give them a good press. There we go. Ooh, those points are looking mighty good, and I'm sure they will be on your units too. So go ahead and press out away from the center flying geese. Press towards the lavender. These are looking really good too. I'm getting excited. Wow, we are just making such great progress, and I'm really proud of you for hanging in there and following along. I'd love to hear from you if you want to post your units or blocks or just, something on social media. All right, now we have all 4 of these units done. We're ready to move back over to the cutting table for the next part. We're cruising through section 4, but now we're going to be making these units right here, which is at the top of page 3 of your handouts. We need 4 of these star points with your seaweed and emerald color and your background fabric. So these are very similar to the units we made with your royal star points. And come around here, Mr. Kim, I'm going to show you what we're going to cut. From our seaweed, we need a total of 8 2.5-inch squares. Again, this is all in your handouts, but I thought we'd just go over it together. And we're going to need a total of 8 side B seaweed triangles. You're also going to need 8 emerald side B triangles, and you're going to lay them out just like this. Again, follow along with your handouts. What we're going to be doing is making 8 of these triangle units that look like this when they're sewn. We need 4 in this orientation and 4 in this orientation, and that's what we have laid out here. Once those are sewn and pressed, then you're going to be sewing them to either side of your large 4.5-inch side A background fabric triangle. And what you would do is take this over to the the sewing machine. Here we go. And we're going to be putting the emerald towards the point of these triangles. So make sure when you lay out the orientation of these little star points that we follow along with the handouts, and the emerald or the brighter green is at the top or the point of your center background triangle. Lay these right sides together, go ahead and stitch. Ultimately, this is the unit that we want to make here, just like this, and it looks exactly like the handouts. We need 4 of those, and they will measure 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches unfinished, and then we'll be able to put these units together like this, so that you're really making an 8.5-inch square. That's what this unit is going to look like. It looks complex, it looks complicated, but as you have followed along with what you're sewing at home, you can see it's really not that hard to put together at all. So go ahead, get all of this made. Follow along with your handouts, make your squares. We need 4 of these, and then we'll be ready to add our purple star points. Once you have sewn these units together, make sure you go back and check to ensure that all your points are just as you want them. This is one of those places in the block where if your points and your intersections aren't lining up, Fix them now because they really will stand out later on, and I don't think you'll be real happy if they're not lining up. So now's your chance to kind of get everything just the way you want, to make adjustments if you need to, and then you're going to make sure that you have 4 of these done before we add the purple star points that are coming next. So go ahead and get all these done, square them up to 8.5 inches unfinished, and we'll meet back at the cutting table to put on our purple star points. We've assembled these 8.5 inch unfinished squares that are the center section of this star points. It's the green center part of the block. And I think Mr. Kim's going to zoom in there and get that. Now we need to expand this. We're going to create a rectangle with some purple star points. So are you ready for the really exciting part? You've already made these. Way back in the introductory class, when we did a little bonus cutting and sewing, you made these beautiful, kind of weird looking rectangles with your grape and your violet fabrics. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add these on either side of our blocks. Let me show you, Mr. Kim, if you'll stand there. And we're going to show you how easy it is to add these units on. Aren't you glad you made these in advance? So just go back through all of your parts and pieces that you may have put aside. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing these units so that we're creating this nice, beautiful angle here. And we're going to have these be our star points. So we're going to gradate from lavender to grape to violet. And so all you would do is when you put these right sides together is I do recommend using a pin here just so you can again make sure you get that perfect point. Let's go over to the sewing machine and do this together. Remember, we're going to make a big rectangle here. Cheeto's holding down the props. We're going to be working to make our units look just like this. So remember to go ahead and pin. I've already pinned one side, and then I'm going to pin the other side, right sides together, and then we're going to sew these. This is pretty easy. And isn't it fun that we had already made our purple star points, and now you can just add them. So the block is extra easy to put together. All right, let's go ahead and stitch these and put these all together. Cheeto, do you approve? Yeah, you do. All 4 of these beautiful rectangle units should be finished by now. And these will measure 16.5 inches by 8.5 inches unfinished. So the length here is obviously the 16.5 inches by 8.5 inches. And we're almost ready to sew these on the center part of the block, but we have one more section left to construct, and that's those pretty pink and red corner squares. So let's move back over to the cutting table for just a few moments and talk about what we're going to do to put those sections together. We're in the last section already for putting this giant block together, and it's really gone together smoothly, and I hope you're having fun throughout the process. If you'll refer to page 3 of your handouts and look down at the bottom part where it says section 5, the first thing we're going to do is tackle making 2 each of these little square units. And that is part of this part of the block. We need to make 2 different versions. Let me show you what I mean here. Keep your handouts handy, but follow along as I show you what we're going to do. This isn't unlike things we've already done. But the first thing you're going to need, you're going to need a total of 4 2.5 inch cherry squares, 4 2.5 inch pink squares, and 4 2.5 by 4.5 inch pink rectangles. So the units are going to go together. You're going to sew your cherry and pink squares together and make 2-patch units, which I've already done. And make sure to press the seams towards the pink. And you can see that I've done that here. And the next thing we're going to do is join those to the rectangles. And make sure that you're making 2 of each version, meaning this is what they'll look like when they're finished. And I have the red on opposite sides with the rectangles in the same position. So we need actually 2 of these and 2 of these. These will measure 4.5 inches when they're all done, 4.5 inches square. And then we're going to go on to make the little triangles, the half square triangles. So get these sewn and then we're going to make the triangles. Now that we've made these little square units, just set them aside for the moment. Maybe put them aside with those background fabric 4.5 inch squares. And let's move on to making these half square triangles. Now again, you've kind of already done this with some of the greens already, so this is going to be pretty easy. All we're doing is you're going to need 8 2.5 inch squares of cherry and 8 of the triangles of your cherry and 8 side B triangles of your pink. And you're going to lay them out exactly like is shown right here on your handouts. Follow along with the video and the handouts, and you're going to be sewing these to either side of those cherry squares so that you'll get half square triangles that look like this. Make sure that you make 4 of each. And then we're going to be adding our 4.5 inch side B background fabric triangles to these to make full half square triangles that are going to look just like this. Again, we need 4 of each for a total of 8, but 4 of each version. So let's move over to the sewing machine and you can sew along with me and we'll get these put together and then we'll finish our blocks. There's no real magic to putting these together. You've done it before, so I know y'all are aces at this. But I like to lay out the units right next to my machine as I sew, so I keep them separate from each other and maybe have one or at least the handouts at the ready so I can see what the orientation is. Remember, we're making 4 of each of these versions for a total of 8. So go ahead and get yours stitched and I'll stitch mine. Now we're ready to put together our blocks. You're going to make 2 of each version. Now they look exactly alike, right? This is probably just a small thing, but I like to make sure that I have the seam lines going in the right direction. These are actually opposing or mirror imaged blocks because of the seam line right here. If you picked this block up and you spun it around, you would see that the seam line now is going this way instead of this way. We need 2 of each of those. So I've laid them out here to show you the difference. Here's what we're going to do. You're just going to make 2 of each of these blocks, and when you put these together, just pay careful attention to where the seam is on that rectangle to make sure that these are mirror images and not the same unit. Again, if you flip this unit around, you would see that the seam is now going in a different direction. So just pay close attention to this, and it will just make your finished block look that much more professionally done. Thoughtful. Let's go ahead and put these together. Sewing these blocks together now is just like sewing a giant war patch, and we've been doing that for months now, so I know you can do it. All 4 of our blocks are now made. The only thing left to do is take them over and trim them up to 8.5 inches square, and then bring all your parts and pieces back over to the sewing machine, and we're going to put that large, big, beautiful block together. You're going to be so proud when you get that done. We have put together all of our sections. All the bits and pieces are ready to go into making this big 32-inch block. I wonder if this is, for some of you, the biggest block you've ever made. Anyway, you've done great. We're ready to sew everything together, but I wanted to talk about how to lay out these units here. Again, what I've done is I've taken the mirror image units so that we've got this horizontal seam, or it's horizontal to me, and then I've mirror imaged them over there. So you can see that the seam follows the line here, and then down there it does the same thing. So it's just one of those little extra attention to detail things that you can do to make it look really, really planned. So just make sure you've done mirror image units on either end. The next thing we're going to do is set them aside for the moment while we literally, it's up to you. We can either sew these in a row, 1, 2, 3, and then we need to sew these on first. So we're going to take these big rectangle units and sew them onto either side of the star center, and then create your rows with your corner blocks and these rectangles, and then we'll have 3 long rows to put together to assemble our block. So you get that done. I'll work on mine here, and we will finish up our beautiful, beautiful block of the month, Big Star. You did it! You finished month 6. What do you think? Aren't you excited to have all the blocks done for this beautiful Block of the Month Blitz quilt? Mr. Kim, what do you think?
It's fantastic. That's so beautiful.
You all have done so much. Your skills have increased tenfold. I'm sure you're feeling so much better about your piecing, about your pressing, about just everything. And above all, you've probably had a great time and had fun, which is our greatest hope. We just wanted to be a blessing to you throughout this entire process. So now we have this 32.5-inch unfinished block. What you need to do at this point is give it a really good press. Make sure it's nice and flat and there's no puckers in any of the seams. And it's time to go back and press everything else, get everything else pressed. I know your blocks are trimmed, ready to go. Way back in month 1, we gave you all the cutting instructions for all the pieces of your background that are going to be your setting pieces. And that's what we're going to do in just a short little bonus video in just a couple weeks for month 7. We're not even going to wait the full 4 weeks in between. This is coming up in just a couple weeks where we'll just pop in here to the studio with all of our blocks up on the design wall and our background fabric pieces. And I'm just going to show you quickly how I put it all together so you can complete piecing your Block of the Month Blitz 2 quilt. We have had so much fun, and what a journey this has been. I want to say a special thanks to Mr. Kim because he's done an excellent job being the videographer, even though he really does have a real career. This is kind of his second career, and we have a lot of fun together in the studio. He always makes me laugh, and he's very generous with his time to do the videography. And our son Andrew has been doing all the editing of these videos, these classes. So I want to say a big special thanks to Andrew too. All right, get all your pieces, all your blocks pressed, get everything ready. Be ready for month 7, just a couple weeks from now. We're gonna show you how to put it all together, and then you'll be done piecing your Block of the Month Blitz 2 quilt. So from all of our friends from Janome, at Janome, we just want to thank you for participating, and we'll see you next month to put it all together. Thanks, everybody.
See you next month.
Bye.